Emotional pain digs a hole inside of us. And with that emptiness comes depth and the capacity to experience empathy, joy, and love. The more sadness, the more trauma, the more experience you've had losing things, the bigger that abyss can grow. But don't make the mistake of not filling it. This is life. You have to go through pain in order to grow. You have to grow that space in order for you to have the capacity to love somebody enough and to love the right person, for instance. Me personally, I've gone through a lot of traumatic love experiences, and it's helped me dig. It's helped me understand what it really means to love somebody and how many different kinds of love there are. It's not this basic transactional emotional currency that everyone seems to be using. Well, I'll love you only if you love me back. I'll love you only if you do what I want you to do. That's not love. We call that conditional love. But the word love doesn't even belong in that term. Unconditional love is the only kind of love that's genuine. I had a friend of mine on Facebook. I posted this concept of the emptiness that you feel from losing, from the pain, the emotional struggles that we all go through, and how he was saying that he gets the empathy part, but the love and the joy not so much. And my response to that is that, well, yeah, of course, it's created the capacity, it's created the container within you that has the potential not only for empathy, but for joy and love. Real love, unconditional love, not conditional love, not transactional emotional currency. The problem is ego, the mind, wants to protect the heart because the mind's concept of love is transactional. Well, I did all this for these people. I did this for that person and this for that person, and they betrayed me. Or they didn't pay me back in kind, and I feel betrayed, and I feel slighted, and I feel all kinds of things because I'm so-and-so and I've done so much and these people owe me. Nobody wants to say that out loud, but that's how everybody feels. I've done this for you. How dare you not reciprocate? And it's a basic law of the dualistic realm that we live in. It's one of the original 7 hermetic laws, the law of reciprocation. This is why the people at the airport, the Hare Krishnas, they would hand you a flower and then you would feel like you need to reciprocate. And it's like, all right, here, let me give you $1. When people caught on to this, they throw the flower on the ground. So the Hare Krishnas started giving American flags, little pins, so people wouldn't throw it on the floor. There's a whole psychological aspect of it that's up here, not in here. So we're moving constantly. The heart loves unconditionally, and the space, your capacity, is here. You've got different brains. You got your logic, right? We mostly live in our left brain. Heart, which is whole. Mind is dualistic. The heart is whole, holy. I talk about how whole with a W, whole, Lee with an H, and then whole as in a whole that the microcosm turns itself inside out into the God consciousness through the crown chakra. But I'm not even trying to talk about all that. I wanted to say quickly that I'm getting a lot of heat for talking about all these new agey ideas, and somebody said that it's a Luciferian concept to talk about Christ consciousness because this involves apotheosis and we cannot rise to Christ's level. And this is a fool's errand. This is kind of a Luciferian inversion from following Christ to becoming Christ. And this whole concept of co-creating the universe is a Luciferian ideology that does not correspond with what's said in the Bible. And I'm going to say yes and no real quick. I don't want to linger here either. It's a proven fact that we co-create the universe. It's a proven fact that we project it create it. It creates a feedback loop. And then depending on our mentality, whether we are in scarcity, fear-based consciousness, or in love, abundance consciousness, it matters how we create the universe and who we interact with, and then we are co-creating it, etc., etc. We're doing a terrible job at it, incidentally. And I'm never going to preach that we're ever going to get there. I'm never going to preach that we are going to become Christ. The idea is that you want to do everything that you can to become Christ, even though you know that you're never going to get there. It's all about the journey. That's life. Life is about the journey, because the destination is death, right? Who's in a hurry to get there? Not me. So if you forget that you're following Christ to be more like him, to attain Christ consciousness, knowing that you will never attain it, it's an endless pursuit. It's not a Luciferian concept. Luciferian concept happens when you go from your heart to your ego, once again, and you think that you can become Christ or rise even beyond that, which many people, that's absolutely a Luciferian inversion of following Christ. So there's always this fine line, okay? Discernment, discernment, discernment. I know I make a lot of people uncomfortable talking about this stuff, and I know that a lot of people that are on here are very religious people that I make uncomfortable by discussing things that are very on the line, that are more in the philosophical field and the history, biblical history, because the Bible has been mythologized, right? It's a part of a lot of people, especially Christians, identify as that these things are who they are, and if they question them, it could be like pulling the card from the bottom of a house of cards, and they lose their whole identity, and they might lose their whole belief system, their whole Bible bubble. If you've seen that video that I did, I think it was a couple of videos. No, you can still believe, you could still entertain ideas that you don't believe, and if it makes you uncomfortable, I understand. You don't have to watch this. I'm not forcing anybody to watch my videos. Conversely to the Christians, I have a lot of people that are atheists or agnostics, and they'd rather just me talk about politics and current events and the history stuff that I talk about, and how history has been erased and twisted, and the Bible is a huge part of that. But I understand that a lot of more secular people that watch my videos don't like this stuff, because they're like, man, he's talking about that. Like, why don't you? I like it when you talk about this, that, and the other thing. And I want to tell you guys that in my pursuit of knowledge and truth and trying to figure out what's going on in the world, the big blockage has always been the satanic Luciferian wall, the game that's being played on the chessboard. And once I saw that all roads lead to the same wall, and I decided to peek over, there was no turning back, and I saw that it had everything to do with the Satanist hatred of God. So it all comes back to God. And the Luciferians, they believe that God is the creator of this realm, is the demiurge, and Lucifer is Prometheus, and he came to help us give knowledge, and he's actually saving us. So that's what the Luciferians believe. So Lucifer and Satan are different people. Lucifer is the 8-pointed star of Ishtar, Venus, whereas Satan, I gotta be careful about this, is the 6-pointed star of Saturn. I made lots of videos on that stuff. You're welcome to go back and hear me talk about it, but I'm not going to talk about it here. The point that I'm trying to make is that if you're trying to find the truth, it's always going to lead you back to the Bible. If you're trying to figure out history and the lies that have been told, it's going to lead you back to the Bible. I used to be a very secular, agnostic person. I used to be extremely, I did not have a stomach for religious stuff and religious people. I thought it was corny, and I thought it was silly, and I thought it was ridiculous, and I used to mock it. I actually used to have a shirt that I'm embarrassed that I wore But he used to say, Christianity's stupid, give up. And I used to wear it around to provoke Christians. And I regret that. My life is full of regrets. And looking back, you know, I made a lot of mistakes, just like everybody else. But that's what growth is all about. It's painful to look back, but there's no growth without pain. So all roads lead to the good book. So if you don't like that stuff, and if you're still not interested in this stuff, then it's no problem. Vlodcast is free form. I just talk about what I want. Sometimes I talk about politics, sometimes I talk about philosophy, sometimes I mix them. That's totally fine. That's the Vlodcast. The Vlad Dailies are really short videos that tend to talk about current events in the news. That's a different channel. Go there, please. And if you like the Mr. 17 stuff, that's the VladTalks main channel. These are all on Rumbles. But I kind of pepper them in TikTok, and I put them on YouTube for some reason. Not that I get any traffic there, because I'm buried in the search engine. But there's plenty. You don't have to watch this. Okay? There's plenty to choose from, because I do almost daily videos. So go there if you like that other stuff. It's available. And I also want to say thank you very much to Charlie for your perpetual support. And if you guys want to support me, it's always appreciated. I am a capitalist, so I do like getting paid for my work. I got a PayPal, a Venmo, and a Cash App in the description. And if you think that makes me a grifter, you're welcome to change the channel. It's no big deal. I never ask anybody to give if they don't have it to give, or if they just don't want to. I watch a lot of stuff that I don't give any money to, and that's totally fine. No big deal. What I wanted to get to is that this idea that I used to have that religion was ridiculous, you know, I still go back and forth, and I think about how I used to be and how I am now, and how both versions of myself would be embarrassed. The version of myself that I am now, going back, I just want to slap myself for a lot of the ways I've been, a lot of the mistakes that I've made, a lot of attitudes I've held, a lot of these bombastic things that I've done, being very outspoken about a lot of stuff that I feel now that I didn't know to speak about, and I had no right to judge people about. And then my former self looking to me now, you know, he's looking at me like, wow, what happened to you, dude? You turned into one of these guys. So I was thinking about that, and I'm always kind of thinking about this stuff. And I was at church, and I was, you know, we got one of these like rock and roll churches where they do all this music, and and a lot of them do it now, and I enjoy it, and it's cool, but it's all these worship songs, and I'm kind of like thinking to myself this particular Sunday how a lot of it's idolatry, because I explained it to my wife like this: if everything is as above, so below, which is one of the Hermetic principles, right? I know that's not Christianity, but I told you, I dabble in other stuff to make points. And that is the rule of this realm. This realm is dualistic. We're supposed to go to the heart, not in duality, to the heart, which is whole, not dualistic. But we have to appreciate the duality, the shadow of the whole. So it's idolatry to worship instead of doing. I was telling my wife this. I don't like all this kissing up, is what it felt like. And I'm like, man, I was just like constantly kissing up. Oh, God is so great. God is so great. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you know what? If as above, so below in this realm, and my Father in heaven, if I'm the microcosm, and then my son's the microcosm, and then his children will be the microcosm, then I want my son to go be a good person. I don't want him to constantly turn around and kiss up to me and say, oh, Dad, you're so great. You're so great. I'm like, yeah, neat, whatever. Like, go be you. Be your own person. Be great. Do wonderful things. Stop telling me how great I am. And this is an aspect that's always bothered me about it. This whole glory to God, glory to God. Like, why don't you go do something? And through this conversation with my wife, I realized something very important. My concept was disingenuous. The same way my friend's concept of conditional love was confusing with unconditional love. Christ said, love your enemies, right? Matthew. 5:44, love your enemy. That's the hardest kind. That's like radical empathy. Love somebody who's your enemy. I've got a lot of people that have done horrible things to me and have went after my kids and my kid and my wife, and have done and said and polluted my friendships with other people with all kinds of lies. It's really hard for me to love those people, but I pray for them every night. So I did the same. It's the same mistake. I looked at it as kissing up, when that love is supposed to be genuine. That worship is supposed to be genuine, because you're supposed to, and I've said this before, the term limb of God. I talk about the machinations of the universe and how we are all extensions of God. Different levels of the phyllotaxis, like the tree, that the branches split off and those branches split off, and eventually we are the leaves. So there's a genuine worship and a disingenuous, which is the kissing up that I saw, that I perceived, which I think a lot of it is kissing up. I think a lot of people, the holier than thous, which there's lots of them, that's what they're doing. They're just trying to, I guess, trick God into being like, look. It's like a kid coming up, hey, what are you doing? And you're like, what do you want? Right? Imagine you can trick God and he's not saying, really? You don't think I know that you're being disingenuous? But here's the thing. I misunderstood. I was looking at it from the ego instead of from the heart. And the best way that my wife explained it, which made everything make sense, is Matthew 20:28. We came to serve, not to be served. We came to do, not to have people do for us. So all these betrayals, all these things that we expect, I did this for you and you didn't do anything good back for me, you just used me. Your purpose, and the word they use is ransom, is to pay the ransom for other people that don't get it. And the more evolved you get spiritually, the closer you get to Christ consciousness without ever reaching it, right? Because every time you get close, you have a halfway point and a halfway point and a halfway point, but you never get to it because you're always a halfway point away from reaching it. You're here to pay the ransom. It gets more difficult. It gets more difficult, and the tests get harder. Just as you graduate through schools, right? Your kindergarten test isn't going to be the same as your high school test. It's going to be harder. The more you graduate, the more you're tested, and the harder the tests become, like unconditional love for your enemies. And Christ talks about that, Matthew 25:40, and this is what brought it all together and made it all make sense to me. When you serve the weakest, the lowest, the least fortunate, Christ said, you do for me. So Christ came to serve, and he said, follow me. So if you are following Christ, what you do for people that aren't following Christ serves Christ. What you do for your enemy, radical empathy, try to understand the way they see the world. The way they see the world is very, very different than you see the world if you are a follower of Christ and you're genuine about it. It's really hard to have empathy. I've talked about dark empathy before, but I think that term is incorrect. I want to change it to radical empathy, because to empathize with somebody who hates you and is actively messing with your family and trying to set fire to your life, that's really difficult. But Christ did it on the cross, didn't he? You have to pray for these people, and that's one of the things that I didn't understand. That's one of the things that I'm struggling with right now, because loyalty is very rare. And I'm realizing that even the people that stuck with me through the hard times where I lost a lot of my friends because of political views, the people that stuck with me, many of them just stuck with me because we're just on the same team. Had nothing to do with the loyalty towards me personally as my friend. Had to do with they just agreed with what I thought. And now that I'm seeing that there's, a friendship is only as strong as its weakest link. So now I'm seeing some of that. And that was part of the conversation I had with my wife. But we're all at different levels. So I pray for everybody. I pray for everybody. And I have to remind myself that I'm here to serve, not be served. That's that Luciferian inversion. We're not here to be served. We're here to pay the ransom for people who are in kindergarten still. If you know the crabs in a bucket analogy that I use all the time, where the crab, if there's two crabs in a bucket, the one at the bottom will always pull the other one down so they both die. Well, you've got to be the enlightened crab that pulls the person up, even if they're not necessarily worthy. You have to pull them up. But the hardest part about that is if you're the crab on the bottom, you have to push them up, even if they spit on you the entire time. You have to try. That's the ransom we have to pay for others. I do want to say one thing, because I do not want to be misunderstood. In Matthew 21:12, and this is all Matthew stuff, Christ does go into the temple and turn tables over because people have not respected the boundaries. So don't get it twisted. I'm not telling you that having empathy and unconditional love for the snake, the frozen snake that begs to be taken into the house and set by the fire, that's destined to bite you and kill you with its poison. I'm not saying anything about letting it into your temple. The fact that I have radical empathy and pray for my enemies has nothing to do with allowing them within the boundaries of my life on any level. That's unacceptable. Finally, the epistle of James, which is actually the epistle of Jacob, Christ's half-brother. It's deeds and works. This is where arguably the Protestant movement broke off, because nowadays it's just faith. Oh, just faith. Just follow Christ. Forget the fact that it loops back around and you're supposed to serve and do deeds, do things. So the whole mentality is to serve and pay and constantly link to Him, who will give you nothing but abundance and love through your heart, and give and give and give. And when you give and give and give, there's no way that that service will not be paid back. Just keep in mind, it's on God's time, not yours. God bless.